Hi and welcome to another video here on the AviationPro channel. Guys, the ultimate Christmas present for 2016 has arrived. FlyTampa's Amsterdam scenery has been released. I've been waiting for this scenery for many months, years even, and finally it's here. Beautiful, beautiful scenery. I will take you through it. Now, I'm from the Netherlands. I visited Amsterdam Airport Schiphol many times. I've flown from and to it. I dropped off passengers. I've done some spotting. I drove by the airport many times, so I kind of know what it looks like in the real world. So I'm going to take a look at the scenery, compare it to some real world footage, and just, take a look at some of the positives and the negatives, although the negatives are only very minor. It's very hard to find any negatives in the scenery because, it's FlyTampa. FlyTampa is well known for producing amazing sceneries. So you can expect the same with Amsterdam. Now, of course, the airport is huge in real life. There are many runways. The terminal area is very big. There are actually like three main areas. You have runway 18 right and 36 left, which is kind of the separate runway where you have to taxi very long for. Then you have kind of the center with all the terminals and stuff, and then you have Schiphol East, which is more for general aviation airplanes. So it's a very big airport. Probably was a lot of work for FlyTampa, but I think they did a great job. So let's take a look at some of the details because it's a beautiful, beautiful scenery. Now guys, actually there's not much to say for me. It's just, looking at beautiful scenes and looking at the beautiful airport because it's modeled very well. All the gates are there with up-to-date textures. All the buildings are up-to-date. You can even see that little Fokker 100 on top of the panorama deck, which is there in real life. Very much eye for detail, a lot of eye candy, but I love it. That's what makes Amsterdam so amazing, and it adds a lot to the atmosphere because flying to Amsterdam with this scenery just gives me the feelings when I go to Amsterdam in real life, and that says a lot because that makes it a good scenery. If it is able to capture your feelings this well and capture all the detail and so accurately, then I think it's a very good scenery. Now the scenery costs about 33 euros. It's not that much for such a great scenery. And if you're used to FlyTampa quality, you will probably be willing to spend that money. Now you just saw some examples of the center of Schiphol, but all areas of Schiphol are very well modeled. As you can see, this is the cargo area next to runway 2406, and just a lot of detail. You can see all the little wagons and vehicles that are really resembling the actual vehicles that drive around at the airport. So that's very, very cool. All the textures are of great quality and just resemble the ground textures that you can find at the real airport. Same for the runways. As you can see, this is an example of runway 24. A very realistic coloring and texturing, I think. So really get that asphalt look that you can see if you've ever been to Amsterdam Airport Schiphol. So this is an example of the night lighting at this airport, and as you can see, it looks beautiful. You can see the nice white 3D lights at the apron, and then on the highways you kind of have the orange glowing lights, and I must say it looks pretty realistic if I compare it to the moments that I drove past Schiphol at nighttime. Very nice taxiways, lighting, not too bright, just nice and dark enough to be realistic, and just the airport buildings and all that is just very well textured, and even the cars and all the vehicles that drive around the airport also have their lights, and all in all, it's just a very realistic environment that I think portrays the airport in the real world very well. Now, as you can see, the add-on covers the airport and its surroundings by photoreal scenery. This is an example of the summer with default textures, and the textures are provided by Orbx FTX Global, so keep that in mind. This is an example of the winter, and as you can see, the colors combine pretty well depending on the season you have selected in the configurator and in prepared. Now this is an example of the airport with the NL2000 scenery. The NL2000 scenery is a photoreal scenery of the Netherlands, and I've only activated the northern part of the Netherlands here, as you can see, so you can kind of see what it looks like, the scenery, when it's combined with the FlyTampa add-on, and also how it compares to the default scenery. But as you can see, it's compatible. The textures line up pretty well, and this is an example of the summer in the same situation. In the northern part you can see the photoreal scenery of the Netherlands, NL2000. In the middle is the airport of Amsterdam, which of course the uppermost layer of the scenery library. And then on the southern part, south of Amsterdam Airport Schiphol, is the default textures that come with FTX Global. So a tiny little problem that I have with the airport. I'm not sure if it's due to my settings or did I do something wrong, but when I get close to the airport or like zoom in like this from the top down view, we can see that the textures of the airport itself change to kind of a darker texture that seems to be related to another season. Even though I selected the same season in the configurator and in Prepared, somehow it changes the textures, which leads to some different colors and some lines that you can see here and there. But I'm sure this is something that FlyTampa can look at and will fix, because FlyTampa is always good at providing updates and support, so that should be no problem. Now the add-on comes with a nice manual to give you some of the ins and outs of the airport and some of the characteristics of the runways, for example, and some of the settings that you can use in order to make the scenery run for you as smooth as possible with the frame rates that you desire. So that's pretty nice. Another thing it provides is a nice scenery configurator, so you can select which runways should be active depending on wind. So it changes the FCAT files, for example. It will give you the option to turn on the runway lights during the day when it's, for example, bad visibility. The docking systems can be switched depending on which simulator you use, and many other options to kind of, you reduce, the impact on the frame rates a little bit if necessary, like the highway traffic, or like, how many vehicles should be driving around the airport, things like that. So there's plenty of opportunity to configure all those kind of things. So as you can see, I have quite high settings used in this video, and we'll come to the performance in a moment. But if you are running into trouble, you can kind of reduce these settings. Some additional options like 3D people, de-icing trucks, adds a lot of detail, which is very nice. The 3D grass can be adjusted as well if necessary. Then you of course have the 3D lights, and you can disable them if it's too much of a performance hit. So as you can see, also snow textures can be used. Normally it doesn't snow that much in Amsterdam, but if necessary you can select it so that it shows in the month of January and February. Additionally, you can select the season to install textures that are most appropriate for the current season. So I will just show you some real footage of a 777 coming in after landing at the gate, and as you can see, this is the real world footage of that 777, and if we compare it with what we can see in the FlyTampa Amsterdam scenery, you can see it looks pretty similar. Nice and detailed tarmac of the apron, and all the symbols and all the lines are there according to reality. So I think that's very nice. And arriving at this airport is just fantastic. If you just taxi into the terminal area with the 737, for example, it just looks so realistic, and I really like that. Again, it captures the feelings that I get when I visit Amsterdam Airport Schiphol in the real world very well. And it just is an awesome sight to look at all those buildings when you taxi in, see all those gates, and especially when you're flying on a VATSIM network, for example. It adds a lot to the realism, because then there's also a lot more traffic at the gates, and the whole picture becomes complete in that way. Now, of course, a very big question is, how does it perform this scenery? Of course, it's a huge airport with lots of buildings, a lot of detail, and I must say you can't expect such scenery to be running at 60 frames per second unless you have a huge computer. Now you can see my specs in the description, so you kind of have an idea what I'm talking about. At smaller airports, like Taxi to Gate, Bratislava, you might have seen some airports in my videos, or Prague Airport by Aerosoft. I tend to get around 50 frames per second when flying the 737. Here I have around 25 to 30. It kind of depends on which location you're looking at while in the virtual cockpit of, for example, the 737 here. But it's okay. I mean, the simulation itself is still smooth. It's just that the frame rate is lower, so you kind of, it doesn't really stutter or anything. You just see the difference in frame rates. But I must say the performance is very good for such a huge airport. And remember that my settings were pretty high. So if you have trouble with your performance, just lower those settings. The fast usage, or the virtual address space, or the virtual memory usage is quite big, of course, but if you're using Prepared, it should be no problem. As you can see, I still have about 1 gigabyte left in this situation. Of course, when you're flying with traffic and VATSIM, maybe it's even lower. And if you use FSX, I would really recommend to lower your settings a little bit if you run into out-of-memory errors, because FSX doesn't handle the memory that well as Prepar does. So keep that in mind. But if you're using Prepared, I don't think it's a very big problem, because as you can see, using the fast monitor by FSU IPC, there's still plenty of memory left for other things. So yeah, but in general, performance is pretty good for such a huge airport. Don't expect 60 frames per second or 50 unless you have a supercomputer, but in general, it's just very, very flyable, in contrast to some of the older sceneries of Amsterdam, like Mega Airport Amsterdam, which was a pain to fly because the frames were just too low to make a good landing. Now, if you're using a less complex aircraft like the Coronado Bonanza that I'm using here, the frames are of course a bit higher. You can see that I'm approaching from Schiphol East and flying towards the center. The frames are kind of in the 30s and 40s, but again, it's no problem. The simulation itself is very smooth, and it can perfectly make a nice orbit around the tower to enjoy some of the details of this scenery. So while we enjoyed some more real-world footage to compare with takeoff from the Runway 36 Center in the simulator, let's talk a bit about the negatives of the scenery. Honestly, there's very little, at least from what I could discover. Of course, over time people will probably discover things, but I know FlyTampa will easily fix that. I have some trouble with some of the textures, that are popping up during the approach, or not equally detailed at some places when flying. Of course, I guess maybe it's due to my system. I mean, they're pretty heavy textures to load, and some of the textures seem to be, you might have seen it in some of the footage, some of the textures seem to be flickering a little bit, but that happens at other add-on airports as well. It's not a big deal. And again, those are things that you will only see when you really investigate the scenery very well. But honestly, if there are any problems or things that are unrealistic, they're bound to be something. So like, you can see the traffic on the highway, when it enters the tunnel, it disappears in the roads. That also happened with other sceneries, so it's not a big deal. So again, all the things that are might be negative about the scenery are mainly in the details, but in general, the entire scenery is fine, very much flyable, very realistic, and just very fun and to fly with. And you can add another airport to your collection for your VATSIM flights, for example, because it's just a beauty and it performs very well. So to leave you with some more positive comments, I would like to stress that this airport is very up to date. If you look at the panorama deck, you can see the Fokker 100 on the panorama terrace. Also, the panorama terrace itself seems to be according to real-world current data. Also, you can see this taxiway at runway 24 at Amsterdam. It's new. It's been there only for a few months, I think, to allow to connect the cargo platform with the center via an extra taxiway. And additionally, these parking spots along runway 36 center and runway 18 center are also very new. So if you buy the scenery, you have to realize that you're buying a new scenery from 2016, and as such, it's very up to date. In contrast to like Mega Airport Amsterdam, which is just outdated, not updated anymore, I believe. So you can be rest assured that your airport will be up to date. Of course, if you know Amsterdam very well and the airport. Every single taxi sign, you might find some things, I don't know, I haven't had any time to look at that in such detail, but and again, the scenery is just beautiful to fly with as it is. So all in all, I think I can conclude that this scenery is just amazing, although some minor things need to be fixed, like some texture issues that I found. I think in general it's just a fantastic scenery. It's great to fly to and from Amsterdam, a great atmosphere, and very up to date, and just very detailed textures and buildings and all that. So absolutely amazing, and a good job by the FlyTampa team. So if you're looking for a great scenery for Amsterdam, forget about the old sceneries. This is the scenery to use, and it's compatible for FSX and Prepar3D. So while we enjoy some more scenes of the traffic and the night at Amsterdam, I'd like to thank you for watching this video here on the AviationPro channel. Let me know in the comments what you think, and feel free to leave any questions below. So the scenery will very likely be featured in the next VATSIM full flight, and of course in other videos as well, so make sure you stay tuned for that by subscribing. It would be very much appreciated. Also check out my Twitter, Facebook and Patreon page to support the AviationPro channel. You can find all the links in the description. So I'd like to thank you for watching this video. Let me know again what you think of it, and I'll see you on the next one. Bye bye.